So another Patreon exclusive. This time I want to show you the sequencer from bidoo. It's called ZouMai. I guess it's pronounced ZouMai. It's a free sequencer from the bidoo collection, which is very much inspired by the Elektron sequencing mindset. So it has many different features that I'm sure many of you will find interesting. And I just thought I will show you most, if not all of its features. We can go slowly, feature by feature, and have a look how we can program interesting sequences, all sorts of different things we can do with this sequencer. Right, so we have 8 tracks that we can use. We have different patterns. We have up to 64 steps per pattern. As you can see here, we can choose the scale, the root note. Right, for each track we have gate, we have volt per octave, and we have 2 CV outs. So per step we can have different CV values. Right, CV1 we can also quantize if we want. Right, so per step we can have different events happening, different modulation, and so on. Right, so let's really start programming a basic sequence and see how this will work. First of all, let's clock it. So you can see we have clock and reset, and we have also run. Now we need also to somehow trigger the run. So what I will do, I will turn off my clock, right, and I will connect the clock to the clock, the reset to the reset, and the run to the run input. And now when I run the clock, you can see also the sequencer is running. Already I will tell you that every time you make big changes like number of steps and stuff like this, you have to reset the sequencer because it will get a bit out of phase. So always connect the reset and remember to reset everything. Okay, so again, we have 8 tracks. Let's use track number 1. We'll use the gate to gate opulus, right, and the volt per octave to change the pitch, right? And now how we can program a sequence. Here we have all of the different, what's called Trigs, also sort of an Elektron mindset, right? So we have the steps or the Trigs. We have a sort of a keyboard where we can program the notes. We have octaves also, and we have the page where we can switch between the pages. Again, each page with 16 steps, and we can change this here to up to 64 steps, right? Let's stay with 16 for now. We can multiply the clock. We can change how the sequence will move. We will see this in a second. And again, we can change the root note and the scale. So let's say, for example, C, let's go, or D even, you know, maybe D Aeolian. Aeolian, basically, it's a minor. Right, so now all of the notes we will enter will be in the D Aeolian or D minor scale. So how we program notes, we go to the step, we click the step we want to program, and then we have to choose a note. Until then, the note will be off. Right, so if now I choose C, right, we have step 1 that will be a C. Right, if I want, let's say, another step here will be a G, and this will be a B flat. Although we are in D, so now it's actually D. Right, if I change it to C, we'll see. Right? So now we are in a different scale. Again, I quantize this to D Aeolian, so now basically it will be D Aeolian. Right, and I can continue like this, adding notes, right? And now let's use the CV output, right? So I can use the CV1, for example, for the velocity, right? Already you can see I have the velocity attenuators all the way up, so they will control, this velocity will control both velocity values of both operators or both oscillators of opulus, right? And let's say that step number 1, you can see here we have CV1 and CV2, they will correspond to those 2 knobs. So step number 1, I want full velocity, right? Step number 5, I want full velocity, and step number 9, right? And now I can say, before I add velocity to the other ones, have a listen. You can see here we have step 1 with full velocity, but step 2 will be with 0 velocity. So how we can control this also, you can see we have 1 full and then 2 empty. So if I go to the number of pulses, this will be basically the number of trigs or the number of steps, the length, right? So if I change this to 3, you will see the CV will stay open longer, right? And this will change also the velocity there. Right, so let's say that step number 4 I want a bit less velocity, step number 10 also. Right? And maybe I will take the velocity down a bit from oscillator 1. You can also change the octave here. Right? So CV1 now controls the velocity. And now let's go to track number 2. Here I can select the different tracks. I will select track number 2. And track number 2 will be, I have here kick all, so this will be the trigger. Volt per octave I'm going to send through stack, just so by default it will be an octave up. Right, and this is going through some delay. So let's now program here a different sequence, right? Let's say just 12 steps. Right, so now track 2, the track for kick all, will have only 12 steps. And let's say something like this. Right, let's say here. And again, we have to choose the same scale. So what was it? A D Aeolian. Right? And now again, I can use both CV outputs, right? So I can say, I can turn off the different sequences with those buttons here. So I turned off the sequence for Opulus. Now we are listening only to kick all. Right, and I want to show you again this idea with the pulses, that I want the CV to be longer than just one step. Right, so let's say CV1 will go to the decay of kick all. And I want step 1, right, to have a longer decay with CV1. Right, but you can hear that it's only for step 1. Right, step 2 will have, 2, 3, and 4 will go back to 0 basically. So what I can do again, I can change step 1 to be longer by changing the pulses. Right? If I take out the delay, have a look here, the CV is open longer. Right, and listen also to the decay. I will bring it back now to 1 pulse. Right? And now to 4, or even 5. Right? So just pay attention, if you want the CV and the gate also to be open for longer, you have to change the number of pulses, right? So let's say also here we will have some more decay and also the last step. And again, I will change the number of pulses because I want it to be longer. Right, and let's use CV2 to change the shape, to change the brightness of kick all, right? So let's say step number 1 will be just a bit bright. Right, step number, 5 will be even brighter. right? Step number 8. Again, I call it step, but basically it's called trig. Again, electron mindset. Right, with the delay. With the first voice. And let's reset also everything because I changed the length. Right, so really easily you can create already simple but interesting sequences with different values for each of the steps, for each of the triggers. Right, I have here another voice. Let me turn off the both sequencers, both tracks. And I have here also the FM operator, right? So let's take again another gate and another pitch or volt per octave. Right, and now let's do something like this. Let's utilize the different reading modes. Right, so let's say I want first step, second, third, and fourth to be the same note. So they will have, you will see this in a second, they will have more chance of happening. Right, then I will have a few different ones. Right? And now we have different reading modes. Again, this is here. So this will go forward. The next one will go backward. Let me just change again the root note and the scale. Right, so now it will go backward. Now it will go ping pong. So left and right, left and right. Right? And then we have random. So it will jump randomly between the steps. And since I have more steps of the same note, they will have more chance of happening. Right? And the next random mode is basically, it's called a drunken walk. So if we look at the original one, at the main random mode, you can see that it's jumping all over the sequence. But if I change it to sort of drunken mode, it will not jump. Basically, the randomness will be if to advance forward or to advance backward. So it will always move once forward or once backward, or once will stay in the same place, right? It will not have big jumps. Which can also be interesting, but now I want fully random. Let's activate other steps. Right, I can change maybe also the octaves here. Right, so really easy just to program a simple sequence or simple sequences. I didn't do anything amazing. Just the ability to have the CV outputs, right? You can have different lengths and stuff like this. Only this already can add quite a lot of variation and interest to your patches and sequences, right? Let's concentrate now on the trig section, right? All of the different electron stuff, interesting sequencing that we can add to the sequences, right? To the different triggers or the different steps. I have here a kick and a hi-hat from Tremor 2, and I have a sort of a 303 style bass, just with the oscillator and the bass module from Outin. Right, the sequencer is already running. So let's start with the bass drum, right? I'm going to connect the gate to the bass drum. Right, and now step 1, step 4, right, and so on. Just 4 on the floor, bass drum. Right, and now we can start adding, for example, steps with probability. Right, so let's say I want this step here, right, also on. but I want this step to have probability. So you can see now it says to probability dice, and the value is 100%. So it has a 100% chance of playing. If I take the value, if I start taking the value down, and again, the corresponding knob is just corresponding to the position of what you want to change. So the value will be here, right? So if I take this to 0 or 1, right, there is almost no chance that it will play. Let's take it to about 70. Right, so now there is a chance that this step will actually be active. Right, let's say that I want to add another step here. Right, but I want this step to play only every couple of bars. I don't want it to play each time, each cycle, but you can change in how many cycles it will play. So if I change this from dice, again, this is the corresponding knob, right? If I change this to count, basically now we can set it to play only on separate, on different bars, basically cycles, right? So if I take the value to 1, it will play one time, right? One time each bar. But if I set it to play one time, and this I will change to 2, it will play once every second bar. Right? This here. Played, didn't play. Played, again didn't, right? So you can change like this. I can have it play once every 4 bars. Now it will play, right? So again, you can add like this more variation over time. Let's have a look at the hi-hat. Right, I will connect the hi-hat, the gate. Right, and let's say, right, the typical open hat here. Right, and let's say I want here another step, but I want this step with probability. So let's change the probability a bit. Right, and let's have another step before it with probability. Right, and I want this step here to have some ratcheting, so you can also add ratcheting per step. Right, so according to the probability, there is a chance that this step will play with ratcheting. Right, so we have here how many pulses, just like we've seen before. We can change the distance between the pulses, so how quickly the ratcheting will be or how slow, and the length of each of those ratchets, right? So if I change this now, for example, to be 3 pulses, right, it will not do anything because the length of the pulses is too big. So if I take the length down, oh, right? Let me turn off the kick for a second, right? And I can also change the distance between them, right? So they happen more quickly. Right? And now let's do something like this, and this is really, really cool, right? We have here, this step here is with probability. Also the ratcheting is with probability, but let's say that I want the probability to affect both. Right now there is a chance that just one will play, just a second will play, that both will play, or that none of them will play. I want that the chances will be either that both will play or that either will not play. So what I can do, I can take this step of the ratcheting and then again change the mode here from fill, we will have a look later, to pre. Right, and now this step will play only when the step before it played. So now they are connected, right? So either they happen together or they are not, they don't happen at all. Right, now I can change this also that whenever the first step with probability is playing, the second one will not play and vice versa. And this is by changing this to pre and exclamation mark here. So now it's inverted. Right, so now it's either the first one is playing or the second one, but not both. Right, but I want to have only both, so I will change this back to pre. Right? Very cool. Let's add another track with the bass. Right, I will change also I will connect also the volt per octave, right? And let's program a sort of a maybe this note. Maybe this one. Right, and let's take them an octave down. Maybe this can stay. Right, let's change also, add some CV to the cutoff maybe. Right. Right, so we have also this, and let's have a look now at the fill. Right, so if we go, for example, I want 1, 2, 3. Right, and here with more cutoff. I want those 3 steps to play only when I decide when it's time to add a fill, right? To add a sort of a turnaround, if you will. Right, so when I go to those steps, I can change this from dice to fill 1, 2, and 3. Right, and now only when I activate the fill, only then they will play. Right, and we can do this for the other ones as well. So here, for example, let's add more notes for the hi-hat. Right, maybe add also some CV for the hi-hats, for the decay. Right, and say those here will have more decay. Right, and again change them to play only when it's time, when I say that it's time for a fill. Right, the same with the kick. Let's add here also some notes with fill. Right, and now let's say that I want some of the notes not to play when I hit the fill. And this again we have the inverted. So let's say I want step 1 of the kick not to play, so this will be fill exclamation mark. The same with this step here. Right, and the same with the third here step. Right, so now when I hit fill, some steps will play and some steps will not play. Right? Very cool. Again. And of course you can add also, right, you can add an external signal if you do it externally with the MIDI controller or with a different sequencer. Again. Right? We can also add a slide to the bass. Right, let's add here a slide. And we can change the type from full to 1, which is probably a bit different. Maybe not on this one, maybe this one here. Right, so again, these are really the ideas behind this electron sequencing, right? Having probability, having steps or trigs that will play only if others will play or only not, having feel, having this counting the bars, so they will play one every 4 bars, one every 5 bars. Another thing I want to show you, if I solo for a second, just the hi-hat, we can also push micro time steps, right? We can also push them forward or backward. So let's say, right, let's say this here, I want to push it a bit forward. So we have here the trim and the respective knob, right? It's late. Right, let me add here a few more steps so you will hear it. Right, let's see this. Right? You can create all sorts of different rhythms, wonky rhythms, lo-fi beats, whatever. Right? Very cool. So now I want to show you the additional gate inputs and also how you can change between patterns, create longer phrases and so on. So here, as you can see, we have 2 additional gate inputs. We have gate 1 and gate 2 that we can route to individual steps, individual trigs, right? So on each trigger, we can choose to have a different gate source. Now, I'm not so sure why it's so useful, because we can add ratcheting and everything to different individual steps, but maybe there is something that I'm missing here and there are other things we can do with this. But let me show you this quickly. I have a sequence going right with Opulus. Sometimes this will happen, this glitch, if I reset it, for example. Right, there are some glitches here, but basically this sequencer is running perfectly. Right, so again, let's say I have here a clock multiplied by 4, right, that I'm going to send to gate 1, and let's say I want step number 7 to receive this clock, which is basically multiplied by 2. Right, so here we have the type. It says here internal, right, and again with the respective knob I can change this to gate 1. Right? So now this gate, this multiplied by 4, is going only to this step. And like this, you have gate 1 and you have gate 2 that again you can use for each and every trig or step. Right, and let me show you now how we can create longer phrases with patterns, sequencing patterns, and so on. Right, so first of all, in the right-click menu, we have a few options for the trigs, for the tracks and patterns. We can copy-paste trigs, we can randomize them, we can randomize the CV, tracks the same, we can randomize them, copy-paste tracks if you want, move up and down the tracks, right? And also the patterns we can randomize and copy paste. So I'm going to copy this pattern, right? And then with this knob here, I will move to pattern 2 and paste it. Right, and we have exactly the same thing. And now I can make a change. For example, let's have this just 12 steps, right? And change maybe the change it a bit. And again, copy this, go to another pattern and paste, right? And change this even more. Let's add here more notes. Right. Let's change this to be, let's say, 16. right? So now we have three different patterns. We have this one, the first one, right? We have the second one, and we have the third. Right, and now I have a few options. There is a CV input here, so I have a few options. I can use a separate sequencer to sequence the patterns. So here, for example, I have the clock divided by 8 that I'm going to use, right, and sequence the ADDR sequencer, again, reset everything. And this ADDR sequencer will sequence the patterns. Right? Right, so we get different variations, we get a longer sequence. Another tool you can use also this module here, also from bidoo. If you want to manually switch between patterns, all you have to do is connect the clock you want to be quantized to. So the changes of patterns will be quantized to the clock. Right, so let's say I want to use the main clock here. Right, and then the pattern. Right, the pattern output will go to the pattern input, and then you have here 8, right, steps basically that you can choose the different patterns. So if I want pattern 3 or 2, and again this will be quantized to the clock. So if I use a slower clock, let's say this divided by 8, right, you see it's waiting, and it will change only with the clock. Right, so like this you can create longer phrases, longer sequences. You can do this randomly. You can do this with another sequencer. You can do this with an external controller, right, switching between the different patterns. Okay, so now I want to show you the expander, which adds lots and lots of functionality and very interesting features. So in the right-click menu, we can choose Add Expander. Just make sure that you have enough space, right? You add the expander and it's added, and also make sure that it's close to the module, right? On this side, otherwise it will not work. Right, so again, this adds lots and lots of functionality. Maybe I can zoom in a bit just so we can see this better. Okay, so first of all, here I have a track with a sequencing kick all. Right, and I have one step, you can see this step here, set with probability. Right, so first of all, from this expander, I can force it, all of the notes just on this track. You can see we have 8. So just on this track, I can force all of the notes with probability to play all the time. Now they will play all the time, right? Or, and of course this has also a CV input, right? Or I can let them not play all of the time, basically taking the probability to 0 by hitting kill here. So now they will never play. Right, and again, you can do this randomly, you can do this with a sequence, you can do this with a MIDI controller, adding more performance functionality. Right, and I can also add offset, so here we have 50. I can add offset again with the CV input or with this knob here, right, and basically say, okay, again, play all the time. Or just offset it a bit so it has a bit more chance, right? Maybe creating sorts of drops and stuff like this. Right? So like this I can really change, I can control the probability for each track separately, right? Instead of changing it globally, we can change this for each of the tracks. Another thing I want to show you here, I have another track here with 3 steps, sequencing 1 FM operator. all of them are set, have a look here, all of them are set to fill, right? So only when I have fill active, they will play, but this fill is global, right? This will activate the fill for all of the tracks. So here on the expander, we have individual fill buttons and CV inputs for each of the tracks, right? So I can activate the fill just for this. And again, I can do this externally with the sequencer, I can do this externally with the MIDI controller. And like this, really control this and add more performance-like features and functionalities. Right, I have here another sequence with another FM operator. And now here we can also transpose sequences, and we have two modes, the blue and the green. Basically, they will set different ranges of transposition. And if you do transpose, just make sure you have a scale selected, because otherwise it will just transpose without any quantization. Right, so here I have an example. I have here an ADDR sequencer, right, that I'm going to use to transpose this voice. So like this, you can also transpose individual tracks, individual sequences. Again, adding lots and lots of movement. And I have here another track with another kick all. You can see it has only 2 steps. Right, but what I can do here, I can rotate them left and right. Right, so here I can choose by how much. So it's set on 1, so they will move 1 step. And here, how long is the sequence? So in this case, I have an 8-step sequence. I'm going to change this to 8, let's say, right? And let's say I wanted to jump 3 steps each and every time, right? So now I can rotate them left or right. I have here a clock division of 12, right? And with this clock division, I'm going basically to push them. Have a look at how they move. Right, now they're here. Right, now they moved again. So again, adding lots and lots and lots of movement and variation, even to simple sequences. It's really easy. Right? Another really interesting feature of this sequencer is the ability to record external sequences, and then you can chain them, you can change them, you can add probability and all sorts of different features that this sequencer has, right? So here we have the recording section. You can see I have the sequencer already running. You can record your keyboard, right? Your MIDI keyboard. You can record all sorts of different sequences. I like to use the Turing machine, right? Just to record the Turing machine and build like these sequences and get inspiration, right? So I'm going to send the volt per octave to the volt per octave input. And for the gates, I'm going to use one of the gates of the Turing machine. And then all I have to do is hit record, right? And we have a sequence. And now, again, I can quantize this internally. So let's say I want this to be D or G, maybe G Dorian. Right, and again now I can start adding probability, right? And I can say ratcheting maybe, right? And also this ratcheting will be with probability. And I can say this note here will play only once every 3 cycles. Right, and then I can go and I can say, okay, pattern 2, I want another sequence. Let's say I want this sequence to be, let's say, 64 steps long, and I can start recording. Right, and again, we have G, Dorian, and we have another sequence. Right, again, just for inspiration, let's change this from 64, let's change this to 5. And again, I can change the notes a bit. Right, and then we have pattern 1. We have pattern 2. Let's have another pattern, just for fun, take the scale a bit up. Right, let's have, let's say, a 12-step, right, and record. And again, we have G, Dorian. Right? And like this, you can get inspiration recording different sequences, or you can record sequences that you actually want. You just connect your MIDI keyboard, volt per octave and gate, and you hit record, and you have sequences that you can start and work with. So the last thing I want to show you is just, again, how you can add a bit more variation to simple sequences, right? I have here a few sequences. This is with the FM operator, another FM operator, right? Kick all, and tremor 2. Right. Now you can see that we have here on and off buttons, but also inputs, CV inputs, and also each track has its own reset input, right? So again, you can do this externally with the sequencer, turning sequences on and off or resetting them at different times. You can do this externally with the MIDI keyboard or controller, and you can do this also randomly. That can add, again, a bit more variation. So one module you can try and use is the clocked random gates, which will basically output random triggers and clocks and gates. Right, and this we can use, for example, to turn on and off sequences. So I can turn the two FM operator sequencers on and off, right? And I can also reset randomly the other sequences, right, and create something a bit more interesting. To reset them, not to turn them on and off, like this, right? Right, although also with on and off for the kick, for example, can also be interesting. Right, so again, just a fun way that you can add a bit more variation. Again, you can do this randomly, you can do this with the MIDI controller, you can do this with a sequencer inside of VCV Rack. And that was it. Again, a really interesting sequencer, very much Elektron-like mindset with all of the different features and trigs and stuff like this. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this was helpful. Thank you again so much for your support. Cheers.